from a bunker in beautiful Parkchester, the Bronx, it's Electoral Dysfunction. Now, here's your host, Tom Brennan.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Electoral Dysfunction, the show where comedians and experts talk about the news of the week from the safety of their quarantine. I'm your host, Tom Brennan. Thank you for being with us for another week. On this show, we try and represent all sides of the argument, the debate. And so we're fortunate enough, I guess you could say, to have with us a couple guests who can speak firsthand to their involvement in the riots in the Capitol a few weeks back. I don't agree with them, but I want to hear what they have to say. Please welcome to Electoral Dysfunction. You know him as the podium guy out of Florida, Adam Johnson. Hey, Adam, how are you?
I'm doing horrible, Tom. I'm in a quarantine Sheridan south of D.C.
Well, sounds good. Well, it's good to have you here. I see that you're waving. Thank you. And also joining us, this says location to be determined. I don't quite understand that. Kevin Greason. Kevin, hi. Welcome to Electoral Dysfunction. Where are you right now?
I'm actually in the afterlife. I'm Kevin Greason. Most people actually just know me as the guy who accidentally tasered his own balls and had a heart attack. So while he was storming the Capitol, so that's probably where you know me from. That's me. I'm
sorry to laugh. It's
okay. I'm used to it. People up here are making fun of me too. It's kind of. I thought it would be different in the afterlife. I thought they'd kind of stop, but they don't. They make fun of me. I thought, because it's the kind of thing that can happen to anybody. It hasn't. I've asked around. It hasn't happened to anybody else. I'm the only one up here it has happened to, but it could happen to anybody.
Well, that's good to know. I guess.
It's good to know. Thanks.
Adam, you all right?
Kevin Taser ball guy.
All right. I guess the question that's on everyone's minds is, what did you guys really think was going to happen when you broke into the Capitol building? I think Adam, go ahead.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know what the big deal was. I mean, I was just there to fuck the podium. Yeah.
That's why you took the podium?
What?
Did you even know what the protest was about?
Protest? What?
Yep. You just saw that podium and you just go for podiums?
Dude, I've been kicked out of half the Raymore Flanagans in Syosset. Okay, Syosset is the capital. The capital, of that's, And look, it was, it was there. I saw, I conquered, I came. So
okay, all right, that's enough. Yeah. Kevin, what you seem a little upset with what he has to say. I can imagine. Protest a little more seriously.
Yeah, we had a real plan before I accidentally tased my balls and had a heart attack and died. We had a real plan, which was we were going to go in, take hostages. We had a doctor who had to tend to me and the third-degree burns on my crotch, and what we were going to do was the doctor was going to sew Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer and Mitt Romney ass to mouth, and we were going to make a human centipede. And that was our plan. So unfortunately, we couldn't do that because before we got in all the excitement, I accidentally tased my balls and had a heart attack and died. So
that is.
I can't be within 800 feet of any Staples in the Madison County area.
Yeah, that's true, Adam. You're currently you were arrested this week. I guess they've let you out. What's next for you? What's your defense?
Defense.
Yeah.
Defense. It's more of an affirmation. I came to fuck a podium, Tom. Mm-hmm. And you can QAnon quote me on that.
Yeah.
Kevin, how about yourself? How are you feeling in the afterlife about how everything?
I don't like it. First of all, not only is everybody making fun of me, I guess the only good thing about being here in the afterlife is it was nice because I did already have my own sheet. So as a ghost, that made things a little bit easier.
Sure.
That was nice. It was just hard because as I was watching everybody else storm the Capitol, I didn't even get to make it in because they were all rushing in, breaking windows, killing police officers like I wanted to do, but instead I was on the ground clutching my heart and groin at the exact same time, dying.
Yeah, because you had tasered yourself in the balls.
In the balls. And I want to dispel one rumor real quickly before
Please,
it gets out of hand. I did not soil my pants when this happened, and that is not true. I mean, I soiled my pants after I died. That happened, but when I tased my balls, I did not soil my pants. That did not happen.
It was all dry.
So that was. If we could dispel that rumor, that would be great.
If you look up school auditorium in a thesaurus, you'll find my face as an antonym.
Adam, I have a cool question. So you were at the Capitol building. You've since been, you head back to Florida, but were arrested there. Did you see Kevin taser himself in the balls? Were you present for this?
Yeah, it was pretty grody. But look, anyone who's going down that far and they're ready to tango, then let's get some mango.
All right.
It is kind of interesting because after I charred my balls with my taser, they did kind of look like mangoes.
There you go.
Red mango is my favorite frozen yogurt shop.
Duly noted. Duly noted. Well, I guess this protest, this day that was this attack on the Capitol. The goal was to be this sort of big.
The goal is to fuck a podium.
Sure. For one of you, it was to fuck a podium. Probably more than one. I guess my question is, you were hoping that Donald Trump's election would be overturned. You were hoping that the president would join you in this action, that you'd really do some damage. It didn't happen. How do you feel? Do you have any regrets? We'll start with you, Adam. Do you have any regrets?
My only regret was not finding another podium to fuck, Tom.
Sure. Where is that podium now? Has the police taken that back?
Don't you talk about my podium like that, Tom.
I would imagine they don't want it at this point.
Yeah. I'd imagine once it goes across state lines. Kevin, any regrets?
Yeah, if I have one regret, it's probably tasing my balls to the point where I had a heart attack and died. That would probably be my biggest regret, I think, out of all of it. Other than that, I think Rudy Giuliani's got it. Weirdly, I'm here in the afterlife. Rudy Giuliani keeps popping up here from time to time. He just shows up and then leaves and goes back. So I don't know if he's getting a visitor's pass or what the deal is with that. But good luck, Rudy. I think you got this.
All right. Well, there you have it. Adam Johnson, Kevin Greason, we appreciate your time and for being here. Again, we may disagree with you, but it's good to hear a different point of view. Any last words before you head out of here? Adam, any last words?
I just want to plug my subreddit on Dogecoin.
Sure.
It's called #Dogecoin.
All right. And Kevin, any last words before you head on out of here?
Yeah, we need to do something about taser control. I think that's something that I think we all agree on is it's time for Congress to do something about. Tasers are a little too dangerous. It's too easy for people to accidentally tase themselves in the balls and have heart attacks, and it's a little too common. And if I can just say something about that and be out there for the people, then I'm happy to take that shock to the nuts for everybody else.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Adam. Enjoy Florida. Kevin, enjoy Afterlife. I don't know which one is worse. Ned Thorne, star wipe us to the panel. And join me in welcoming this week's panel to talk about what could be the last days of America. Exciting times to be alive. First up, joining us, I forgot to ask, are you out in California right now, my friend? Man.
I am.
Comedian by night, Army Sergeant by day, G.I. Joe himself, Benari Polton. Benari, how are you?
I'm doing terrific, and of course, my opinions in no way reflect those of the United States Army, the United States Army Reserve, the U.S. government, any of our friends, coalition partners, or anyone real or imagined. Just had to say that.
Same for me. Also joining us, very funny comedian. Always glad to have her back, either as herself or as her alter ego, Karen. Adrienne Sexton's with us. Hey, Adrienne, how are you?
I'm great. All of my opinions are backed up by the military, the extraterrestrials, and the U.S. government.
Yeah, I should forget. None of our coalition partners back me up, but for some reason, Paraguay is all in on everything I say.
Paraguay's a big supporter.
Yeah, they call me and they're like, "Thank you, Tom."
Finally, somebody said what we're thinking.
Now, please give us your bank codes. And finally, from Bloomberg Opinion, the last man standing. I don't know why I'm calling you that, but I've decided to call you that now. Robert George. Hey, Robert, how are you?
I'm doing as well as can be expected in these interesting times, my friend, as well as being expected. But we're here, damn it, and we're powering forward.
Yep. Are we ever?
Tom, by the way, can I make
go ahead.
Sorry.
Yes.
I say, can I make a statement? I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm a little bit nervous in saying this. I think I'm willing to say right here, right now on electoral dysfunction, that this is the beginning of the end of the Donald Trump administration.
We were doing so well. We were doing so well till you said that.
Yeah. But this just in. Biden says Trump is president. Amidst Dominion
He's invoked the
scam.
25th Amendment on Biden already?
Yeah.
Oh, he was right.
Joe Biden says Dominion really worked. Sorry.
Exactly.
And
They found another 7 million votes.
I have committed several homicides over the course of my campaign. It's really dark.
The Senate has been dissolved, and they have a fully operational Death Star.
I'm surrendering my son Hunter to Q right now.
Yeah, and new Supreme Leader John F. Kennedy Jr.
Hey, good job on
He's
that.
back!
Well, it's a clone of him, and he
back!
has put together a clone army of John F. Kennedy Jr.
And he is going to be marrying Ivanka Trump, where they will be lovers forever.
In all seriousness, though,
How funny would that be if a week from today everything we just said is true?
And I know it's like don't make it happen.
All right, go ahead, Benari. Go ahead.
I do want to say to Robert, and I want to extend my thanks to him for being a hipster on the rational, sane side of the GOP. He was one of the earliest to say, this guy's a problem. This isn't what the GOP was supposed to be. So I do thank you for being early on that and for always being a man of integrity on that side of the aisle. And I also want to extend my condolences to the loss and the death of your party. Because you knew it. And well, and I look forward to whatever the future endeavors.
Can there be a more fitting example or symbol of like the end of these Trump years, knock wood, that on Friday the NRA filed for bankruptcy. It's like leaving you. It's leaving you. And not many people realize that the NRA was founded in the 1800s in New York. It was still incorporated in New York until Friday, and so it's declaring bankruptcy, and it's picking up and heading off to Texas.
Where good causes go to die.
Yeah.
As our good pal Eitan Levine pointed out. As friend of the show, Eitan Levine pointed out, all it took was 1 year without a school shooting for the NRA to go bankrupt.
But seriously, yeah. I mean, think of all the loss of revenue, all the loss of publicity.
Yeah,
all
but
it also took cutting off the Russian laundered money.
I'm sure that helped.
And like Letitia James just being like, "I'm coming for you," being like, "Let's pack up shop."
The trade-off, though, the trade-off of like no school shootings but yeah, nearly 400,000 dead. You know, I'm not quite sure if that's exactly what we
Right.
really want to go
I don't
with.
know that it's
Boy.
necessarily a trade-off, though. Like, I don't think that we need to live in a world where we think the option is either a pandemic or mass
Death
human.
or death.
Anyway,
Yeah.
let's talk about the President of the United States, who, as of this recording, is still Donald John Trump. I had a terrifying moment earlier. I was talking to my father on the phone, and I asked him, hey, what was scarier, the last days of Nixon or the last days of Trump? And he said Trump without even thinking. Like, he didn't even pause. Like, and the last days of Nixon, you know, I think history doesn't, like, we kind of, when the end of the Nixon administration is taught, it's kind of like things moved fast for Washington, but like there were like 2 weeks there where the president was just drunk and isolated and still had control, but like his Secretary of State and Vice President had to say to the Army, please ignore any directions from the president. And yet, and all this while we were in the middle of a Cold War. And yet my father, and I would bet most people who lived through that time, and most people didn't, thinks now is a far more dangerous time. And on that note, the President of the United States has been banned from most social media platforms, I think, at this point. I think, you know, he might still have a Friendster account. I haven't checked. He's off Twitter. This in reaction to the riots on Capitol Hill back on January 6th, riots that left 5 people dead, have led to a major congressional investigation in security and potentially into members of Congress who may have potentially abetted some of these rioters. And you know, these rioters, as we now understand it, were explicit, some of them, all of them planning to do harm, some of them planning to take lives. You know, chants of hang Mike Pence were chanted through the Capitol building. It seems like every day, I don't know, I remember watching it on TV, and I wanted to start here, like watching on TV, it was terrifying. And yet it seems like the more that comes out, the more terrifying that
Yep.
day has become.
Yeah, and it's definitely because it's, you know, I remember 9/11. We all do. We watched it live as it was happening, and then it's the conspiracy theories that grew up out of that. You know, Bush did 9/11, like all that kind of stuff. Whereas immediately after this, because they have been telegraphing this for weeks, you know, January 6th, this is 1776, this
They
is
wore
it,
T-shirts.
last
They
stand.
literally wore
T-shirts.
T-shirts saying like,
Yeah.
"We're doing Civil War."
They were
January 6th, 2021.
I sieged the Capitol and killed Nancy Pelosi, and all I got was this T-shirt.
And to a podium.
It's so and it's just coming out more that they can't hide behind, oh well, it's just banter, it's just
Yeah.
words. It's like words have consequences, like from top to bottom. You know, and I have to say the second impeachment didn't feel as good as the first one, because it's just kind of, it left me feeling empty, because it's just like, yeah, he's got to go,
And
but
I would
it's
add,
everyone else. Yeah.
I think I want to add, hopping off that, it's worth noting, as you mentioned, I forgot to even mention, so many bad things have happened. The president was
Right.
impeached again this week.
Twice. Only president in
but-
history.
Not lost on
Only
it.
president.
As more of this evidence is, 50% of our presidents who have been impeached are Donald Trump. But as
Oh,
more information came,
we're talking about impeachment. Is this like a rerun from last year? I mean, what the
Yeah.
heck is going on?
Seriously,
But I
this time
think-
last year.
to Adrian's point about what they can't hide behind, even, you know, like prominent Republicans who may have voted against impeachment, like Kevin McCarthy, Dan Crenshaw, still, you know, in their remarks, you note, like, denounce the president for his handling of it. There was no like, oh, we don't, like, there were moments where it was like, maybe it was Antifa, but those are relatively, like, that's no longer the point of view of the leadership, even like the insane, evil, corrupt leadership of the House GOP or the Senate GOP. Like, maybe a few of the wingnuts say that, but like there was a general sense, you know, you saw in that debate on impeachment, House Republicans really took this, you're right, but we should move on attitude,
Right.
which I still think is kind of a bullshit attitude. But it was they all seemed much more shook by what happened than I expected them to, and I was very struck by that. I think. Whoop. I shut down the conversation on that one.
But what? Yeah, which makes me think, like, what did they think was going to happen?
Well, I think we
Right.
know what they thought was going to happen. What they thought was going
Right.
to happen was what the president told them, which was, we're going to walk down to the Capitol. I'm right behind you.
Together.
and together. However, this wasn't just an attack on the Capitol or on Congress. This is a rare joint session of Congress in which not only are both houses, Congress are there, the Senate's there, so both chambers are there, but also the Vice President of the United States, so the representative of the executive branch. And if that had been captured and taken place, the only person left in charge of the federal government would have been the president and his cabinet. And that is very real. That was very clearly the plan. And then it would have been, had they captured people, it would have been either a terrorist negotiation, or if they executed. I mean, we came very close probably to seeing Mike Pence and Nancy Pelosi and maybe Chuck Grassley and anyone else who was in the chain of command who was in that Capitol building executed on live television.
Yeah.
And we came seconds away and probably 20 to 30 feet away from that actually being a reality.
There was a there was a clip.
I just want to add a quick bit of context just for listeners. Like, chain of command of the United States goes president, next in line is vice president, next is Speaker of the House, and next is the president of the Senate. And just as a reminder, the vice president is popularly elected, or president pro tem of the Senate. Vice president is popularly elected. Speaker is popularly elected by a group of the people's representatives who think that person should be charged. And the president pro tem is historically the oldest person they can find in the building. So imagine if the oldest person in your office was third in line.
And not to mention the future vice president was also.
And the future vice president, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
So, sorry, Robert, go ahead.
No, it's okay. There was a report that came out Thursday or Friday that did basically a side-by-side timeline from the moment when the rioters had breached the Capitol and who were actually coming in and were literally feet away from the House chamber to the decision when the Secret Service had told Mike Pence, sorry, Mr. Vice President, you have to leave right now, because they had been telling him for about 15 or 20 minutes, sir, we should probably leave. And Mike Pence, I'm not gonna dunk on him. To his credit, saying, look, I think it's important we stay here and we get this done right now. But then when it was obvious that they were breached and literally the marauders were inside of the building, they said, Mr. President, we've got to leave right now. And so they escort him out. Basically, like 1 minute afterwards, these guys are coming in, and they were basically about 60 or 65 seconds from having eyes on sight of the vice president. It was literally that close. And earlier on in the week, we saw the video of the Capitol police officer who basically did this like brilliant talk about improv.
Officer Goodman.
This improv head fake, because he realizes he's close to the Senate chamber. That's where they're trying to go. So he like veers them out, pushes the guy,
antagonizes him,
forcing him to follow, and everybody else follows,
and
keeping him
literally a door between them. And
I mean, it's those like instant thinking that basically prevented a much wider tragedy.
And you also, I think the one thing that's been particularly difficult to process, but it is also extremely powerful, is the testimony of the Capitol police officers who, one, felt betrayed by their lack of backup from some of their fellow officers, who absolutely, no bones about it, were like, how did they get to where I am, and now I'm in the line of fire, and my guys aren't backing me up.
They're taking freaking selfies, they're having to deal with this.
But also, so there's the anger of that, but also the genuine surprise on the part of the insurrectionists that not all the police were on their side. One woman said they're supposed to shoot Black Lives Matter, not us. They were surprised that they got pepper sprayed, and that was part of it, and that's how you know that this was more of a coordinated effort because they were
Yeah.
told you will be brought in like liberators. They were told you will have
Yes,
run of the
like
place. No
Trump's-
one's
Wait,
going to get in your
where have we
way.
heard that? Where have we heard that
Trump's
one before?
speech, Trump's speech right before all of this is like, and we'll go up there and they'll meet with us. Maybe they'll walk
Yeah.
with us. It's like all of this,
Yeah.
like, this delusion that,
Yeah.
because in the past and like over the summer, it's like they have been, Blue Lives Matter,
Yeah.
which obviously now we all
It-
know
it does
is
not.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, and so this idea, like they seriously believe that the police, the military, everyone will just sort of pick up their arms
Was on their
and
side,
join
yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
And
like
I
let's
think-
all go kill
But-
Nancy
but-
Pelosi
I
together.
think adding to the question, like, what did the some of the Republicans in the House who changed their minds or changed their perspectives on things think was going to happen? I think they genuinely did not believe that a protest made up of mostly white people would be violent. I think they generally were like, we don't need that many cops. It's our people, and they're
not to
safe,
them.
and they're
that a mob
Exactly.
of people generally would be violent to them, and I think that this was the other interesting thing. I mean, again, you saw police officers beaten with flags that said, the thin blue line and Blue Lives Matter. But
Yeah.
I think there were plenty of Republican congressmen and Republican senators who realized while they were in lockdown, oh shit, they're not going to differentiate between Democrats and Republicans
Yeah.
when they're shooting at us.
I
They
think,
don't. They
Right.
don't care.
I think, Adrian, you
Right.
said before we came on the
Did-
air, before we started recording, Adrian, I think you said it perfectly. Like, a lot of those Republicans probably put together that, like, as with that they're not very famous, and just the house pin would be
Right.
enough for people to be like,
Yeah,
I
it's
guess you're bad. Like,
Right. Like seeing the videos of, like, I think it was Jason Crow saying, everyone take your pins off. Like those identifiers that,
Yeah.
would, to the mob, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican when you're in that madness. But like, yeah, they would have, immediately from the moment it happened, I was thinking like, where is AOC? Where is Ilhan Omar? Are they safe? And then hearing like Alana Presley saying the panic buttons were removed from her office. Who did that?
Yeah.
Like it's these
Yeah.
kind of questions.
Them finding their way
Because-
to Clyburn's
Yeah.
office, where not
Yes.
his actual office,
There's no
where he works,
signifier.
knowing where the Senate parliamentarian's
Right.
office. Like no one knows where the Senate parliamentarian's office
No one
is.
knows where
The
those
parliamentarian has
the
to be
ghost
shown
of
where his
Robert
fucking office
Byrd and
is.
no one else.
No, I mean, it's.
a big
I mean,
ghost show.
the speakers lobby. A place where I worked for 4 years, going in there on a daily
Yeah.
basis. That's something that you could. That's something that you
Right
can
there.
kind of stumble
Yeah.
across because it's it's just off of the main hall. But yeah, where the whip's office is, or the majority leader office is, those are just some windy hallways around. But these folks seem to know exactly how to get there. And as Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill from New Jersey would point out, another former veteran. She was the one who said that alarm bells were going off in her head the day before when they were suddenly seeing all of these tours that were being conducted, and there hadn't been any tours basically since
Pandemic.
last March.
And as a rule, there haven't been tours.
And there hadn't been. Now look,
It wasn't just like people aren't showing up. They're not supposed
Right.
to.
I think it's very important that because of this being a very fast-moving story, we don't necessarily accidentally start spreading conspiracy theories
Yeah.
and so forth. And there's an investigation that's going on. But Congresswoman Sherrill wrote a letter that was signed on to by I think 30 of her colleagues that said.
Yeah.
This needs to be a line of investigation right here. It is quite possible that some members realized, they had constituents in town. Yes,
Yeah.
they were coming for, quote, the protest on January 6th, but they weren't planning on they were not necessarily planning on anything violent. But it said, okay, my constituents are in town. I'm going to send a staffer to show them around the Capitol and so forth.
Yeah.
It could
And-
very well be something as
And I
innocent
would
as
add, I would add that. Well, and I would add that clarifier. Yeah, like as I understand it, and I'm still looking. There's like rules-wise, there are no organized public tours. Members of Congress, I don't think are banned explicitly from having public tours. I think I would put a qualifier on the word innocent because we aren't doing like those tours have been canceled because there's a pandemic. So I
Right.
think even if those people were innocent,
You're
bringing them into the building
already being
was pretty
irresponsible.
irresponsible. But
Yeah.
you're right. Like you're right.
But
it might not have been a
also-
conspiracy.
But also,
Yeah,
but what's important is that like all the cell phones,
Mhm.
like they can track the cell phones, and so it's one thing if you are a constituent, you're there for the protest, and because you love Trump and you love your rep, but like there's a difference between now you're inside the building and you're in this hallway where you were the day before, and so like those are the things
you're right.
that yeah.
That's
Yeah.
something that, and again, that's why I was saying. But I just want to be because we're in such a tense time.
Right,
Everybody is
right.
just so. I think it's just very important to put this in the full context.
And
And
I
I think
have to
it's
give I have
also-
to give credit to them as they're conducting this investigation. As information comes out, it's actually been very methodical and pretty meticulous in terms of they're putting out. We know these things happen. We don't know intent yet. And then as we learn more, then it becomes a question of, okay, well, this happened. Now maybe it's either useful idiot or you were conspiring. And then you hone in on that. But they're not throwing, one thing that is heartening is they're not throwing names out there. I know the one QAnon, Boebert, is that her name?
Yeah.
Lauren Boebert from Colorado. Yeah.
Yeah, she's it was one of those things where they were like, oh, Congress, we had members of Congress giving tours, and she's like, I didn't help the insurrectionists. That was perfectly innocent. It's like, yeah, you might not want to throw yourself in. No one mentioned you, so you might not want to jump in front of that.
It's just my mother.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly where I was on the day that they went through at 2:45 p.m.
She's like, I'm 5'2" and I weigh 98 pounds and I carry a gun. It's like, okay, well, that's nice.
There's a
I'm really
chance one of you
suspicious.
committed
This is just a
treason.
side tangent. I am very suspicious of women who make their whole personality about how short they are. I'm sorry. If it's just like, I'm 5 feet tall. Like,
Right.
okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I
on you.
respect that. I'm with you. And I would say also though,
They're
Robert.
just trying to heighten the contradictions, Adrian.
Oh, right. Oh, wow.
Does anyone know if she's single though? That's my question.
that pun brought to you by Bloomberg Opinion. Take it up with them.
And yes, Mike's Hard Lemonade
Yeah.
still going strong. 11 months into a pandemic. Hey,
Does
Mike is
Bloomberg
still hot.
own Mike Hard
Drinking.
Lemonade?
Speaking of drinking, when Trump got into office, I found myself drinking a lot by coping, and I was like, I can't do this because I will die if I keep drinking.
Sure.
So I stopped drinking, but come Wednesday, or even, before, like, so I bought the bottle of champagne and it's ready to go.
I
So
do. By the way, I do have to make this point out. It's something that
Very
may
exciting.
very well be disconcerting to the entire country. That Joe Biden will be the second consecutive teetotaling president we've had, which just goes to prove that we could still be in for some many rocky rides. In these years, in these months ahead.
Yeah, I think the rest of his family will make up for it.
I'm gonna go.
so.
Yeah, I think the important thing to
Yeah.
note about Donald Trump.
it's
by the way,
balanced.
the problem with Donald Trump wasn't the fact that he was too sober. That's not the
With
issue
alcohol.
we've been dealing
with
with.
alcohol.
Also,
Alcohol.
there's a difference of why. Donald Trump was a control freak. Joe Biden's family was killed by a drunk driver. So there's like a difference in terms of the reasons why.
Oh, jeez, Benari, did you have to go there?
Yeah.
Benari, Debbie Downer, Polson.
I'd like
Thank
to
you
point
very
out
much.
now that the Democratic president is coming in again. Suddenly, Robert's like, "Did you have to go there towards facts?" Now, suddenly Robert's going to be next week. I think we need to talk about the deficit. Anyway,
Oh, we're
But it's also this is such a credit to Joe Biden's to the inability for actual controversies to stick to Joe Biden is that you really have to be like, I mean, that guy doesn't drink enough. I mean, come on, people, what are we doing here?
Well, actually, I'm sorry. Benari, you had to set me up for that.
I'm
telling
trying.
you this.
I'm trying.
By not drinking, isn't Joe Biden sort of plagiarizing Donald Trump?
Hey, it's worked for him in the past, and it can work for him in the future. That's all.
all right, let's move forward. here.
All right, I will. In the future, I promise to knock it off the plagiarism.
All right.
You know what? Honestly, if that is the
That's a great
I am
joke for
so
anyone
looking
who's
forward-
read What It Takes.
Right?
I am so
Scandals.
looking forward to 4 years of like, oh, he ripped off someone else's speech. Great.
Okay.
That's great. Oh, he stole Bernie's plan. Terrific. Now we have Medicare for all. That's great. I love a guy who plagiarizes.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Honestly, yeah, he plagiarized
Is
from
his
good
dog
people.
really from a shelter? Like, oh!
Ah!
I'll take that over Donald Trump's plagiarism of the worst of
Mein Kampf.
Andrew Johnson, Richard Nixon,
Yeah.
and Bill Clinton. Anyway, so
And Adolf Hitler.
let's I
To
think
name
one
a-
other thing, going back to the impeachment conversation, is just that Cheryl is also, Mickey Cheryl, an important thing to note about her, a lot of crazy people go to the House of Representatives. She is not one of them. Like, she's a pretty, like, serious, sane person. And as you said, Robert, like, that letter, she was very like, this needs to be looked into, while also allowing that, you know, it's possible that it was you know, that it's possible that it's as possible that a bunch of House of Representatives members are part of a coup as it is that they were a bunch of dum-dums who didn't realize they shouldn't have let people into the building. We got a real low threshold for getting into the House of Representatives in this country.
Yeah.
Like, there's a reason it's
Isn't
only
it
2 years.
interesting-
There's a reason we
Yeah.
have a Senate.
Yeah, there's a reason the House of
That is-
Representatives every 2 years,
They're
because people are like,
dignified.
whoops, that guy's an idiot. Forget it.
On
Yeah.
the other hand, just to push back against that, I give you Tommy Tuberville. You know, the new
Of
senator,
course, yes.
the new
Right.
senator from Alabama.
Civics professor.
The new
Tommy
senator
Tuberville.
from Alabama who said, well, you know, I don't see why we can't, you know, just delay the inauguration until this pandemic crisis is over.
Yeah.
January 20th, it's in the freaking Constitution, Mr.
Yeah, well,
Tuberville.
look, in his defense, you know, the president was trying very hard to reach him in the middle of an insurrection. So I don't know how long he will be Senator Tuberville as the investigations
True.
go on. But
Yeah.
but senators in the Constitution weren't always elected. They were supposed to be appointed by their states and be the more prestigious and adult. They were supposed to be the adults in the room.
Yes.
If we're going old school originalist here.
Are you calling for a repeal of the 17th Amendment?
I'm not.
Bernard? Is that what-
No,
is
not
that
at
what's
all.
going on here?
What I'm saying is that
my veins, in my
that
veins.
the Tommy Tubervilles initially, as the founder set it up, were not supposed to be the kind of person that could get into a Senate seat,
This is
because
true.
that was reserved for the House, and we all know how people are in various states and
Yeah.
districts. But like the Senate was supposed to be for just like career diplomats and statesmen, and it was
Yeah.
supposed to be given as you know, it was supposed to be, you know, it was supposed to be for like inside baseball and favors and
We
know,
common
there's-
folk
there's-
were
you know,
we
there's
common
that
folk were
old
too
saying-
stupid
you
to
know,
vote
you
Senate.
know, the way
You know,
it's
there's-
supposed to be run.
You know, there's that saying about when they look at the list of you know, standards, life standards and education standards and things like that, and it's something along the lines of, you know, Alabama is thankful for Mississippi, or Mississippi is thankful for Alabama. You know, suddenly with Tommy Tuberville, I feel like Marsha Blackburn is suddenly thankful that Tommy Tuberville is in the Senate,
She
because she's no
probably
longer
is.
the dumbest.
Yeah.
She's no longer the dumbest senator.
And
you know? I mean,
everyone is thankful that Holly is there
Yeah.
to take
But
to take
also
the brunt
kind
of
of
this.
not.
wait. No, this is
For them.
this is different.
All
This
right.
is different. I'm talking about dumb senators. Josh Hawley is not
He's a
a dumb
smart guy.
senator, which
That's the
makes
problem.
which makes him more dangerous. So I'm
Of
making
course, yeah.
categorical judgment. Now, frankly, there are
Very
certain dumb-
eugenicsy of you,
there
Robert.
there are certain dumb Democratic senators, but in the interest of goodwill and the fact that we're going into an inauguration, I won't be mentioning them by name.
Also, I feel like we do a pretty good job of just like shuffling all of our dumb senators off into like a closet somewhere.
Yeah.
There's some
Yeah.
guy out in Arizona or New Mexico or something who's like one of the most like best looking people in the history of the United States Senate who they never let talk, and that makes me assume he's very stupid.
Do you think that that's what they did during the lockdown, and that there was like one senator who's looking around and they're like, Tuberville's there and like Blackburn's there, and all of a sudden like, oh no, I'm in the dumb closet. Oh wait,
It's just Homer. It's Homer Simpson and the other two dumb guys in the basement with the bee.
like, how did I get locked down with these assholes?
Schumer's
Wait
like,
a
no,
minute.
I need you to keep
Oh,
an eye on Tuberville. I just need you to look
You
at
know,
Tuberville. No, I'm not
But I
here.
want to
I'm
say,
saying you're dumb.
what's
Get down there.
But like getting back to the impeachment, think about it. So
Sure.
Donald Trump's been impeached twice, right?
Yep.
And that is like insane. But he's been impeached twice over trying to thwart the election against Joe Biden. So it's like it's this like the grand story of the whole thing.
Chef's
It's
kiss.
just like has always been about Joe Biden. So it's like
which is really weird, because if you would have thought that you would have thought that in terms of like avatars that would turn the right completely and totally batshit crazy, you would have to the point of insurrection. You would have thought it would have been somebody with like, oh, I don't know, a weird name like Barack Hussein Obama. And now, let's stipulating that the craziness certainly started. You know, amongst the Obama years. But the thing that basically sent them all over the edge was the about to be inauguration of Joe. Okay, Robinette is a kind of a weird middle name. I'll stipulate that. But Joe Biden is the one that really sends them into revolutionary fervor. You know, it's just like really, really weird.
And here's I'd say a reason for that. And the reason is because one of the reasons is because he is like, I think a part of why Joe Biden was such an appealing candidate is basically like we nominated what Republicans normally nominate, like folksy old white guy who can connect with real Americans, who has
can get his agenda, can get an agenda
also
passed.
His our vice president is going to be is a woman of color.
Yeah,
and
that is very
everything's
true.
thrown
And
onto
also,
her.
But actually,
but if you put yourself in the racist mindset for a moment, and you go back to the same thing that set people off during Reconstruction and ended up, ending in the murder of a president and then the undermining of Reconstruction, and then ended with what Ted Cruz bafflingly wanted to reference, which was the Rutherford B. Hayes installation by the Congress.
Did they call him Rutherford B. Hayes at the time?
They called him Rutherford B. Hayes.
Wait, like the New York Post at the time had Rutherford.
10,000%.
By the way, quick question: if you want to put yourself in a racist mindset, should you immediately wear a Boston hat? Yeah.
Hey, no, I object.
Went there.
Boston is the home of abolitionist movement. It is the hub of the universe. How dare you?
That's
sir.
right.
Sorry.
The Boston Massacre.
Movement.
Have you no decency, sir, at long last?
The birthplace of our liberty.
Also, I just want to say, as a Boston guy,
hang on, it's particularly involving Boston sports teams, but we won't go there.
Listen,
hang on, I just want to say, of all the things that happened to Donald Trump this week, the thing that you absolutely know made him the saddest and the maddest is that Bill Belichick refused his fucking medal. And you know that of the impeachment and the failed coup, he was like, Bill, of all the people to stab me in the back.
A2 Bill. No,
but clearly that was just to shut him up for the rub and tug incident, right? Like,
no, that was Kraft, who's still probably getting rub and tugs near Mar-a-Lago.
It was Robert Kraft, who was Bill Belichick's boss.
I mean, look, everyone.
Everyone's been to a Mar-a-Lago rub and tug.
Yeah, there's no way anyone who's been invited by Trump to anything hasn't been offered at least one rub and tug.
I mean, what's the point?
If you're going to be indicted later, you better get a rub and tug out of it.
You got to get a happy ending one way or the other.
Right. Or
before we get off this topic, pardon the expression, I did want to just go back to something that Adrian had brought up, and because it's really important that we have this kind of bookends of two impeachments, and they are ultimately coming out of Donald Trump's fevered mindset, a fevered mindset that ultimately that has some ultimate real basis in reality. That and this is something that he foresaw, a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, that Joe Biden would be his biggest threat to re-election. So coming out, it's coming out of that. There's a straight line to dual impeachment, the two impeachments, and the uprising at the Capitol. Mm-hmm. He had to go, using Giuliani and various intermediaries, to try and strong arm Ukraine into drumming up an investigation to smear Biden on the front end, and then in the back end, using the 4 years of accumulated alternative facts that has poisoned a major section of the entire populace to reality, to engender this fantasy that the election was stolen, and managing to get several thousands of people on the Capitol grounds into believing it. So I mean, this is exactly what where we've come from. But it all comes out from this reality that Donald Trump, you can call him stupid, or you can call him crazy, or whatever. But he from a political strategist point of view,
he was
recognized that Joe Biden was the biggest threat to him.
He was correct. And what I want to say is, it's not just the 4 years. You could really say it's the 12 years since the rise of the Tea Party, but it's longer than that. What we're seeing is the culmination, and this is the end game, if you will, for what started post-Civil War and things that America has tried to reckon with. And of course they thought they were going to get away with it this time, because they did get away with it during Reconstruction. They did get away with it, in the 20s and the 30s, and then we had the Civil Rights Act in the 60s, and then that brought us through the turmoil of the 70s and 80s, where they were able to sort of re-engineer it in a different way, and it's come to fruition. This was the most self-inflicted wound possible. And what's really interesting to me is that in the end, all of the things that people marched for over the summer, from Black Lives Matter to defunding the police or reforming the police, however you wanted to brand it, this insurrection is going to make all of that happen, because now people see all the veneer has been ripped off, and we saw this for what it was, which is an insurrection. This was an absolute trying to thwart the will of the American people, and it's so rooted in racism and this idea of white identity, of this belongs to us, of angry white people, because these weren't poor people. This was not economic anxiety. These were very wealthy, professional white people who believed that they deserved their status, and other people who didn't look like them did not.
You've got this great image, and the video has been popping up all over social media over the weekend, of the woman Jenna, whose last name I don't remember her last name.
Ryan.
Yes.
Jenna Ryan, Texas lawyer. I think she's a lawyer.
Real estate. She gave
Jenna
a
Ryan,
plug. She broke a window and then turned to the camera, was like, "Hey, hire me for your real estate needs."
She flew her private jet back to Texas.
She doesn't get it anywhere.
And she there's this video of her up this weekend, which is this is a perfect way for the Trump. I won't call it the Trump era, because he's going to be around, but for the Trump administration to be closing down, where she said, I came to Washington because the president called for me to be there, and I had to respond to him. This is like this is like
in my heart of hearts, she said.
If you're an impeachment manager or just a regular prosecutor, this is like exhibit number one to proving the president of the United States, not just at the speech of the rally, not just the rally speech, but for the 2 months since November 3rd of inciting his supporters into this fiction that the election was stolen, and urging them to come here and raise hell.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the gentleman who was going through the Capitol building dressed as a goat of some sort. If I am not mistaken,
he was a QAnon shaman.
Sorry, that's my fault. I believe I read the other day. I need to fact check this. If it is not him, it was one of these protesters whose lawyers, I'm sure more than one, but it was one who was focused on, whose lawyer has already used the president asked him to do this as a defense in court, which is going to be something that a former president is going to have to deal with. While we were talking, I got an email from my father, who I was speaking to before recording, just said, look at this. And it's an article from August 25th, 1974. headline in the New York Times: Pentagon kept tight rein in last days of Nixon. So,
But aren't they going to just
Thomas
move?
Brennan
But
Sr.,
the My
yes,
Pillow
strikes
guy
again.
wants Kash Patel to be head of the CIA.
In
So
Nixon's
if the My Pillow guy.
in defense of the Nixon administration, they actually had a Secretary of Defense, though,
it's true.
to run the Pentagon.
But I think all that to say, I think what's interesting about this moment in time, you talk about, a lot of people have been saying, all it would take is the president telling these people the election's over for this to stop. I don't think that's true, and I think that's another part of it. And Bill Belichick stepping down, his power is gone. The day of the riots, I was watching it at work, and a colleague of mine, someone on TV, was like, "Why won't the president say anything?" And a colleague of mine said, because they won't do anything, and then he'll realize how powerless he is.
Yeah.
And I think that is true. Which is not to say he is completely powerful. He is powerful if they agree with him, and I think he's never going to.
But the thing is,
why you're dangerous.
Nobody wants to admit how powerful this QAnon thing is, and how it has warped politics, warped people's perceptions. Because if
Exactly.
you were to say everybody needs to stop and go home, they immediately go, he was told to say that. The president has been cloned. And, this is what they do, and they believe it. And, everyone buy groceries and stock up the car and learn Navajo. They're learning, it's...
Because he's a figurehead of this cult. But they will immediately turn on him.
They're learning not because they believe it. They can't understand what we're talking if we're talking Navajo. What?
Which is hilarious, of course, because if you guys know your history, that's basically how the U.S. beat the Nazis in
with the Navajo
code talkers. It's
it's not going to work with QAnon people.
And then we promptly thanked the indigenous people of this land.
Yes.
Sorry,
we did give them the Secretary of the Interior, so it's worked out.
80 years later.
80 years later, it totally worked out.
All right.
But even when Trump was forced to make that taped speech of, I condone violence, and that, it was oddly edited, they immediately were saying, that's not him, it's a deep fake, he doesn't mean it. And of course he doesn't, because then he doubles down 2 days later on Twitter, and then he's out. It's... we're beyond reason right
beyond
now.
Q.
I don't remember who the tweet. I don't remember.
We're on R at this point.
I don't remember whose. I don't remember whose Twitter thread put this out, because this is not somebody. This is not somebody that I regularly follow. But this woman examined a lot of the social media threads of people who were planning on coming to Washington on January 6th, and it was very, very clear. For years we've been going through this whole, the media takes Trump literally, but not figuratively, and his followers take him figuratively and not literally. Meanwhile, Michael Cohen, who testified before Congress, talked about how Donald Trump speaks in code, definitely to those who are around him, because like the mafia Don, pun intended, obviously he can't go out and say, yo, go and whack this person. It has to be it's sort of like, my favorite comparison that I've been using recently is like Henry II, won't somebody rid me of this meddlesome priest? That vice president of mine has not been. He hasn't been.
He was disloyal. He was disloyal.
Will he show courage?
But the point is, when this person on Twitter was examining tweets and the other social media interactions, it was very, very clear that Trump supporters understood what he was telling them at a specific time. They would say, he's dialing this back down right now because he has to say that right now. He has to say that because everybody's watching. But we know what he means. We need to basically stand by for further orders. He's telling us to back down, but what he really means is X, Y, and Z. So I mean, it's disconcerting that that they know exactly what he's saying at a specific time, and they're willing to follow him.
And what I think that's a really interesting thing. There's two things at play here. One, this was a movement that was ripe for a con artist to take it over. A lot of people in this country, and a lot of this country, and we have to reckon with this, and it doesn't matter politics or beliefs. We are like cultists in search of a cult.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's like Marvel movies and Star Wars or Star Trek, or like political, Democrats, Republicans, we love to belong to things, and we love charismatic leaders, and I'm always thankful that as a kid, the cult I decided to join was like the cult of Stan Lee. I was like, hey, true believers, do good things. With great power comes great responsibility. And I'm like, I'm in. That's still kind of a cult. It's just for good.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna counter there with it was a cult of do good things, and if we could figure out a way to charge double on this,
give me your money to do the good. Do good with your dollars.
Yeah.
But that's what it always.
Well, capitalism is a cult, but it's a cult for good.
I don't know about that.
Trump thing really, really blending of that Christian evangelical, like taking that, Jerry Falwell, Jimmy Swaggart, and like building upon that, where every single one of them has a book to sell, has a charity. Give us your money. We'll build the wall.
Where does this money go? But Donald Trump. One of the most interesting things about Donald Trump, and it is unfortunate because he is going to be in the psyche and the pop culture and the literary psyche, the literary headspace of us for many, many years to come. Yeah. One of the most interesting, in fact, by the way,
is this a book you wrote?
A book I've mentioned a couple of times.
Have you read this book called The Art of the Deal?
Read my book.
A book that I've mentioned a couple of times, Generations, which was written by the same authors of their later book called The Fourth Turning, which we mentioned on this show before.
A book beloved by Thomas F. Brennan, my dad.
Exactly. Now this book is 30 years old. It came out in 1991, and they list generational archetypes.
That doesn't sound like that's not right. That math can't be right.
I'm
sorry, that math is incorrect.
1971.
That's incorrect.
This is the point here. They talk about they list generational archetypes and rise of boomers and things like that. This is on page 11 of a book that came out in 1991, and this line here is directed towards baby boomers.
Don't vote for Donald Trump. He's a threat to democracy. Is that what it says?
You may feel some disappointment in the Dan Quayles and Donald Trumps who have been among your first age mates to climb life's pyramid, along with some danger in the prospect of boomer presidents and boomer-led Congresses farther down the road. So
yes.
Robert, I want so badly for an episode of this show for you to turn your camera around and there to just be like strings all over your apartment with like a photo of Dan.
And now
Quayle,
the Yellow King is clearly behind.
So the point I wanted to say, although I made a digression there, but the point I was going to say before about Trump, and this is to Benari's point about this nation being a cult ready nation. Don and other people have pointed this out before. Donald Trump, even though he manages to con evangelicals, is not a particularly religious man, but there is an element of spirituality within him, and that is the prosperity gospel and Norman Vincent Peale. The whole idea of the power of positive thinking. Yes, he's a con man. Yes, he managed to con millions of people into this whole image of the election being stolen and so forth. But that comes out of this power of positive thinking of his. He ultimately, the con man biggest victim has been himself. He has conned himself, and there's no way I could have possibly lost this election. So there has to have been a conspiracy. Dominion had to have been behind it. There had to have been votes. All of this. So he ultimately cons himself the most. And if he, to the extent that you con himself the most, he manages it. It becomes that much easier for him to sell the whole idea that this is con true.
Well, and there's also the scary aspect, and this is where it gets into okay, he's a con man, but one of the reasons why I think he's so upset is at some point there was probably, people did help him or try to help him steal an election, right? So in his mind, the only way you could stop me from stealing the election is to steal it back. And so, because there's that argument of like, look, I talked to these guys, the Republican secretaries of state said I had it in the bag, that they were going to do this, and then they didn't. And so that's a betrayal. So like part of the anger, I think, coming from a con man is like, I talked to these guys. They said they were going to fucking rig this for me, and they didn't.
And not lost on me in this exact week, in the last week of his presidency, who is the person, what story comes out? That he's not going to pay his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, who was instrumental in a lot of these stealing the elections. Like now that he's gotten to the deadline,
as we said when we were on stage, and scene.
Mission. I mean, there you go. Like his mission was not accomplished, and that is, I think, I think that's why that story came out.
He was never getting paid.
No, he was never getting paid. But
he was never getting paid.
He was never getting paid. But
no one was ever getting.
No one was ever getting paid. But for a Donald Trump type, like I guarantee you, whereas in previous times he'd be like, oh yeah, we'll get to it. If you asked him, he'd be like, well, he said he'd steal the election for me,
and he didn't.
So he's not getting paid.
Why would I pay him?
That's what I wanted.
I think
a thing.
Why would I give vaccines to Arizona? They did not steal the election for me.
A thing that has me, I was saying this earlier before we start recording. Now that he has been banned from Twitter, like my illogical anxiety is low, but my logical anxiety is high. So like the part of me that was like, what did he say? What's it going to do to my day? What is it going to screw up? Oh God, everything's, particularly on Saturdays. Remember you like go on these rants on Saturday mornings and I'd be like, you're the laziest guy. Take the morning off. Like take weekends off.
Those were those were the long shits.
That's true.
The weekends were for the long shits.
But now I have anxiety because we knew where he was when he was tweeting. Like we had, as Robert said, we had a direct line to his thinking. We knew he was in the bathroom or on the golf course. And now there is a part of me that's like, so what is he doing right now if he's not on Twitter? What button will he push to take out his rage if he must?
I think that I hopefully like Congresswoman Presley's panic buttons. I hope they just disassembled all the buttons. So it's just angrily pressing red buttons, thinking that they're launching.
What they should not have done, they should not have publicly taken away his Twitter account. They should have just figured out a tech that stopped it. But like, he could still see.
They're gonna go crazy over this tweet. Why can't I see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on Wednesday, he's not leaving until the morning, right?
Yeah.
And isn't it like he's gonna go on Air Force One so he can bilk us for one more time of taxpayer dollars to go on Air Force One?
Historically,
but I've heard there's
former presidents have gotten that right.
Right. They don't do that. But
no, they have.
Tom, this is important. Historically, former presidents do not leave on Marine One or Air Force One because it's no longer that.
Well,
he wants to fly to Florida on the morning of the 20th. So he will be leaving on Air Force One, and he will be landing in Florida on Air Force One because it's mentally important for him.
Sure.
I'm the president. But there's now that means I also heard that there are 2 nuclear footballs, one going with him and one that's going to be there for Biden. And that makes me 2 of them.
As of noon, that nuclear football that will be going to Florida will be irrelevant. The codes will be meaningless.
Exactly.
I think
that is
I'm betting one is a Nerf nuclear football.
That is kind of weird.
Someone at the Defense Department just put a lot of nerds candy inside that bag 3 years ago.
Yeah.
It's those.
That is actually kind of weird though if you think about it. That because under normal inauguration protocol and schedule, where there's the outgoing president is right here and the incoming one is there. The military aide who is within X feet of both of them. He comes in following President A and he leaves following President B. You now have two separate aides, one who's going to be going with Trump, and then the other one who's going to be with Biden. And there's this interesting thought that there's somebody in the Defense Department who has the power to deactivate whatever codes that are with the aide that are with Trump at 11:59 and 59 seconds, and activate the ones. I mean, it's interesting. It's something that I've never thought about before, because this is what we have to think about now.
I love that that means there's a military aide on Wednesday who at 12:01 is just going to be in Florida for no reason. He's going to be like,
yeah,
all right, I guess, can I get a flight back? All right. One last question and we will call it a day, and we'll do this kind of, lightning round style-ish. Is Donald Trump going to pardon himself before Wednesday? Benari.
I think he's going to try. I mean, if anyone were going to try it, he will try it. I would like to point out something, though. And the pardon power has never been constitutionally tested. And I know that there are a lot of federal prosecutors right now, and I know there are a lot of judges who would love to have a Marbury v. Madison style test case. And if there was any president to test it, because the fact that he was impeached, and there was only one article of impeachment that was incitement to insurrection. There's a couple of things, as we've discussed before, in the limits to the pardon power, which is pretty broad. Cases of impeachment, the pardons are not valid in cases of impeachment. Now, we can argue what that means, if that involves other people's impeachment or your own impeachment, or if that also involves people who helped you do the crime that you got impeached for. And
other people's pardons.
Other people's pardons. So not only the self-pardon are we going to be looking at, but also pardoning anyone who took part in the insurrection. I think if he tries that, that's going to open up years of a legal battle that will help define and probably ultimately curb one of the broadest presidential powers that we have in the Constitution.
Adrian, what do you think? Do you think he's going to pardon himself this week?
I think he's going to try. I definitely think he's good. If he won't, he's definitely talking about it. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And especially, let's say he does, and it does become this debate of what is the extent of the presidential pardon power. And then it'll obviously ultimately go to the Supreme Court, and how do they handle it, right? Because he thought that these people, he picked them thinking that they would have his back. And strangely, they went with the law and the laws of the land. But
they don't need him anymore.
Right. They don't need him. They got their judges. So it'll be interesting as a constitution nerd, a political nerd. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, I just want him to see justice, whether that's Letitia James in New York or what's happening in Georgia, DC, the city itself. I just want to see him suffer.
I would add, by the way, that you made that point about they don't need him anymore. That I would say that came to mind this week when people are like, why is Mitch McConnell okay with impeachment? Because he doesn't need him anymore.
He doesn't need him.
Robert, what do you think?
Amy Coney Barrett, pick up, new
sorry, who?
This.
Yeah.
I think he will. We were just talking about being on Air Force One. I think there'll be a passel of pardons that he will issue while he's in the air, flying down to Florida, and they will include his family and various others, and they will include him. They will include himself. And Benari is absolutely right. That will open the door to years of litigation, and we'll have to see how this plays out.
One other funny thing about pardons, though, is they can note, if you're pardoned, one, it implies a criminal offense may or may not have taken place, and Ivanka might not like that. so much.
Yep.
But I mean, the idiot brothers don't care because they're just like, great, I'm not going to jail.
Let's go shoot cheetahs.
But
I would 100% love it if it's like, and he has pardons for Ivanka Trump, Tiffany Trump, Eric Trump. That's it.
That's it. That's it. But the other
Not
thing
that
is
rooster.
that in civil cases and in criminal trials now, they can be compelled to testify because the
Yes.
Fifth Amendment no longer applies. They cannot plead the Fifth any longer because
Right.
they can't be held criminally liable for these things.
Yeah.
And so if they then refuse to testify in future cases, they then open themselves up to new litigation and maybe
Several people have pointed out that that pardoning himself actually could be opening up way more
legal
litigation
liability
than what he's already facing. And by the way, one other thing, Adrian mentioned Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York. Let's not forget the already underway investigation from Cy Vance, the district attorney for Manhattan, who is targeting Trump's tax returns specifically for his attempt to cover up payments to Stormy Daniels. That, I believe, it is and will remain for a while the biggest legal vulnerability that Donald Trump faces in his post-presidency.
And look, he's going to do more crimes. So it doesn't matter. Like, he's going to do more crimes.
That's what he does.
When he got impeached and they didn't convict him, I think I said during that, I'm like, he's going to do more crimes. They can impeach him again.
He's going to hold up the Miami-Dade airport Chili's on his way out the door.
It's like Adam Schiff became this weird soothsayer where it's like, you cannot restrain him. You cannot, he is going to do this again if you let him. It's like, what?
I love
And
the
he
image
did.
of him just being like
That
directing
argument
all.
aged very well.
I love the
Every
image of him
member-
as president directing all of his Secret Service agents to hold up a 7-Eleven in Florida at 11:55 a.m. on Wednesday.
He's just like running back to Air Force One with like money and like a cash register, and it's just like go
Got a whole bunch
go.
of Monster
It's
Energy
like
drinks.
the Wayne Brady. It's the Wayne Brady sketch. The Wayne Brady sketch on
Yep.
and Dave Chappelle. It's just like, hi, motherfucker.
I think, it's going to be an interesting week. I can't wait to see what happens. We'll leave it there, though I will quickly add that, in my opinion, yes, he will pardon himself. And I misspoke before. He'd pardon both sons. He'd pardon Eric and Barron. Anyway.
He might accidentally pardon Don Jr. by writing his own name, and then like in Sharpie, someone scrawled Jr.
So it was like,
on
is that a J or a
He'll
junior?
pardon
We don't
John
know.
Barron.
And with that, we will call it a week for electoral dysfunction. Before we get out of here, Benari, where can folks find you on the internet?
Always a good place to look for me on Twitter and Instagram at Benari Lee, BENARILEE.
Excellent. Adrian, where can folks find you online and follow more of your antics?
You can find me on Twitter at Adrian_Sexton and on Instagram at Adrian Princess of Pudding.
And it's a great Instagram page. Lots of beautiful photos of uptown Manhattan. It's worth checking out.
Yes.
And of course, Robert, where can the folks find you online?
On Twitter, at Rob George, come for the puns, stay for the trenchant political commentary, or vice versa. On the Instagrams, Rob George 29, so you can see like my beautiful face and stuff like that.
Excellent.
And find us all on Gab at @ Let's Go Do a Treason.
Yeah,
And it's
I'm
definitely not a sting operation. Please give us all your information,
I am,
your
of
personal
course-
data, your bank
My
PIN number,
handle
your
is my
location.
social security number.
Yeah. I'm on Parlor at Eric Trump.
And, oh, that's right. Of
Hello.
course, I forgot that, because Parla has been offline, you can also find me at My Pillow Talk, which is this brand new conservative talk social media site I'm starting.
Solid joke.
So,
And with that, thank you, panel. I'll also say, as always, thank you to Declan Shalvey and Jordy Belair for designing the Electoral Dysfunction Eagle. Thank you to Kevin Scott for making our show animation. Thank you to Joanne Harris for composing the theme music. Thank you to James Heskey and Rich Templeton for stopping by with us earlier. And thank you, as always, to my pal Ned Thorne for helping me put these together every single week. Now, to play us out this week, anyone who checked out our election night show saw this beautiful piece, and we thought this was a perfect week to revisit it. So we're going to kick it down to the great state of North Carolina for our old pal Jamelia Patad. Ned Thorne, Star White Mead in North Carolina.
is that band whose haunting resort at the havoc of war and the battle's confusion, a home and a country should leave us no more. Their blood has washed out their foul footsteps pollution. No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave. And the star-spangled